All right, so get ready because we are going deep into the mind of Elon Musk.
Oh, yeah.
This time, we're talking about that crazy 3-hour interview he did on Joe Rogan. And it was wild. They went everywhere.
They covered so much ground. It's not just the usual Tesla and SpaceX stuff.
Right.
This time, they got into politics.
Yeah.
Media, AI, robots,
Uh-huh.
even some pretty out there predictions about where society is headed.
Yeah, and Musk definitely did not hold back.
Oh, no.
Like, remember that story about the guy whose pet squirrel was
Oh, yeah.
seized and, get this, killed by the government?
Oh, no.
I know, right?
Oh, I do remember that.
Musk uses that as a prime example of government overreach.
Yeah, it's a really powerful example. And it leads right into one of his biggest concerns. The erosion of free speech in America.
Right.
He's basically saying if they can do that to a harmless pet, what's stopping them from going after people who just disagree with them?
Okay, yeah, I see his point. But it gets even crazier.
Yeah.
He goes on to say that freedom of speech is basically on life support.
Wow.
And that this election is America's last chance to save democracy.
That's a pretty intense statement.
Yeah.
And it's all tied to his thoughts on what a Kamala Harris presidency would look like.
Okay, let's hear it.
He kind of paints this picture of like a one-party system, massive changes to immigration,
Right.
and what he sees as like even more government overreach and censorship.
Okay, so we're getting into some pretty heavy stuff here. But it's not all doom and gloom.
Oh, good.
He also dropped some exciting news, too.
Like what?
The release of Grok.
Grok.
It's this new AI he's developed.
Okay.
And it's designed to be, like, way less restrictive than other AIs out there.
Interesting.
And even have a sense of humor.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I know, right? They even had Grok roast transgender athletes in the interview, which was, interesting.
Yeah, the humor element of Grok is really interesting. It's like Musk is pushing back against this whole idea that AI needs to be super censored or limited in how it responds.
Right.
Could be huge if it actually takes off.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of huge, get this.
Okay.
He claims that humanoid robots will actually outnumber humans within 20 years.
That's
I know.
that is a bold prediction.
Is.
The speed at which AI and robotics are developing is just mind-boggling. Like what that means for jobs, for society, even our own sense of what it means to be human.
Right.
Those are some big questions we might need to start grappling with a lot sooner than we think.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, this one might raise some eyebrows.
Hey.
He's got this whole theory about why Democrats are flying immigrants to swing states.
What's the theory?
He suggests it's like a calculated move to create a permanent Democratic majority.
I see.
Basically ensuring they win future elections.
So they're trying to rig the system, is what he's saying.
Yeah, basically. It's a pretty controversial claim.
Yeah, for sure. Controversial is putting it lightly, maybe.
Yeah. And then he just throws in his take on COVID-19 vaccines.
Oh, does he?
Expressing skepticism about their safety and the way they were rolled out.
Interesting. It's worth noting that his stance on vaccines doesn't exactly line up with what most scientists are saying.
Right.
But it does reflect this growing distrust of institutions, which is something that pops up a lot in the interview.
For sure. And this next bit might shock you.
Okay, hit me.
He even hints at the possibility of a Tesla phone.
A Tesla phone? Really?
Yeah.
Is he actually working on it?
He says he's not actively working on it right now, but wouldn't rule it out if
Wow.
Apple and Google start getting too restrictive with their app stores.
Wow. A Tesla phone could be a total game changer, especially if he positions it as, like, the champion of free speech and open access.
Right. Which seems to be a really big priority for him.
Yeah, for sure.
It would be wild to see how that plays out. Okay, are you ready for a truly bizarre anecdote?
Oh, yeah. Always. Lay it on me.
So Musk actually attended that White House Correspondents' Dinner where Obama roasted Trump.
Oh, yeah, that infamous dinner.
Yeah.
It's almost become a symbol of, like, how divided American politics has become.
Totally. And Musk described the whole atmosphere as super tense,
Yeah, I bet.
with Obama just relentlessly mocking Trump.
Yikes.
He even wondered if that whole experience might have actually fueled Trump's decision to run for president.
Oh, wow. Talk about unintended consequences.
Right.
It's a pretty interesting theory. Like, did Obama unintentionally create his own political rival by publicly humiliating him?
Crazy, right.
It really makes you think.
Now, this next part gets into some kind of tricky territory. Remember when Kamala Harris used that Trump quote to make it sound like he was against abortion rights?
Right, the one about protecting women?
Yeah.
I remember that. It was about immigration, though.
Oh, right. Illegal immigration.
Yeah.
And Musk called her out on it. Hard.
Yeah, he wasn't happy about that.
No, he was not. saying it was a total misrepresentation of his words. Uh-huh. And speaking of not happy, he also criticized the Democrats for using the 25th Amendment to, like, remove Biden from office without a proper primary.
Right. He sees that as a total power grab.
Uh-huh. Just
Yeah.
another way for them to, like, solidify their control.
And for those who might not know, the 25th Amendment basically allows for removing a president who's deemed unfit for office.
Right.
And it's been a really hot topic lately.
Yeah. It's some heavy stuff.
Definitely.
And he doesn't hold back on his opinion of Kamala Harris either, saying she's not capable of leading the country.
Ouch.
He basically believes that she would just be a puppet for the Democratic establishment, which is, a pretty harsh assessment. But it does reflect the level of scrutiny any candidate faces when they're running for the highest office.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when they're vying for the most powerful position in the world.
Totally. And he even went so far as to highlight instances where he claims Kamala Harris straight up lied about her record.
Oh, really? Like what?
Like saying she was a head coach when she was actually an assistant coach.
Mm.
And even claiming she witnessed the Tiananmen Square protests, which, is verifiably false.
Yeah, those accusations of dishonesty are definitely serious. And it points to how important truthfulness and integrity are, especially in leadership roles.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And things get even darker when he brings up Diddy and the rumors about his alleged involvement in child trafficking.
Whoa, okay. That took a turn.
I know, right?
These are some seriously heavy allegations.
Yeah.
Definitely to be treated with caution.
For sure. But Musk goes on to speculate that Diddy might have used compromising information to control celebrities in Hollywood and influence their political endorsements. He even draws a parallel to the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
Yeah, that comparison to Epstein is really disturbing.
Yeah.
And it taps into that, deep-seated fear of powerful figures abusing their influence.
Right.
It's a really sensitive topic. And it's crucial to remember that these are just allegations, not proven facts.
Absolutely. Okay, you ready for another one of those unexpected Musk tangents?
I'll always hit me.
He starts talking about John McAfee.
John McAfee.
Yeah.
The software guy.
The software guy who is on the run from the authorities.
Oh, yeah, right. Didn't he allegedly kill his neighbor in Belize?
Yeah.
John McAfee was quite a character, to say the least. His story is like something out of a movie, full of twists and turns.
Totally.
And it really highlights the dangers of unchecked power and the allure of living outside the law.
Musk even jokes about McAfee cooking meth in his backyard.
Oh, wow.
Definitely a glimpse into his sometimes dark sense of humor.
Yeah, he definitely has a unique way of looking at things.
That's an understatement. And
Yeah.
get this, he even suggests that maybe the neighbor deserved to be killed because he had supposedly killed McAfee's dog.
Whoa, okay. That's a pretty extreme statement, even for Musk.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying he's willing to condone violence in certain situations,
Right.
which is obviously super controversial.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, shifting gears a bit, he also takes a jab at the BBC
The BBC, what for?
for covering up the crimes of Jimmy Savile. You remember him?
Oh, right, that TV personality who turned out to be a horrific child sex abuser.
That's the one. And the BBC totally swept it under the rug.
Yeah, the Jimmy Savile scandal was huge.
Uh-huh.
A total blow to the BBC's credibility. It shows how these big institutions can get away with protecting their own interests instead of the safety of vulnerable people.
Musk sees it as a total betrayal of public trust.
Yeah, I can see why he'd feel that way.
And this is where things get really sensitive. He dives into the topic of gender identity
Okay.
and expresses some pretty strong opinions.
Like what?
He's been really critical of the transgender movement,
Uh-huh.
arguing that biological sex is real and that allowing men to compete in women's sports is just unfair.
Right. That's been a big point of contention.
Yeah, he even brings up autogenophilia, which is a very controversial theory.
Right. The idea that some straight men are aroused by the thought of being women. Yeah, this is a super complex and sensitive topic.
Yeah.
Really important to approach it with a nuanced understanding of gender identity and sexual orientation.
Totally agree. And he also expresses concerns about the potential for men to exploit, transgender policies for bad reasons, like gaining access to women's spaces,
Right.
or taking advantage of vulnerable individuals.
Yeah, that's definitely a valid concern. It highlights the need for thoughtful policies that balance the rights of transgender people with the safety and well-being of everyone.
Exactly. All right, so remember how Musk is like super critical of the media?
Oh, yeah, he's been pretty vocal about that.
Well, he circles back to that, arguing that they've become way too ideologically driven and aren't even interested in reporting the truth anymore.
So he's saying they're pushing an agenda.
Basically, yeah. This
Right.
distrust of the media is like a recurring theme for him.
Uh-huh.
He sees them as part of this larger system of control that's trying to like shape public opinion and shut down dissenting voices. He even compares the media's coverage of Trump to the propaganda used by dictators.
Wow, that's a pretty strong comparison.
I know, right? Saying they've demonized him so much that people can't even see him objectively anymore.
Yeah, it definitely reflects the bad blood between Musk and the mainstream media.
Totally. And he doesn't stop there. He points out how the media has ignored or downplayed stories that could hurt the Democrats.
Oh, like what?
Like the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Right.
Or the claims of voter fraud in 2020.
Yeah, those accusations of media bias definitely contribute to the erosion of trust in traditional news sources, which is something we're seeing more and more these days.
It's a trend, that's for sure. He goes on to argue that all of this selective reporting and hypocrisy from the media has created this environment of fear and censorship, where people are straight up scared to express opinions that go against the grain.
Yeah, that fear of being canceled or ostracized for having the wrong opinion is definitely a real thing.
Totally. This concern about censorship is like at the heart of a lot of what Musk talks about.
You know, free speech is huge for him.
Uh-huh.
He sees it as absolutely crucial for a functioning democracy. And he believes that any attempt to silence dissenting voices is a direct threat to individual freedom.
He even suggests that the media's constant attacks on Trump might have actually backfired.
Backfired. How so?
Like made him more popular with his base and energized his supporters.
Interesting. So the media trying to discredit him actually strengthened his appeal. That's definitely food for thought.
Right. Makes you think. Okay, ready for another Musk hot take.
Hit me.
He criticizes Hollywood for its perceived liberal bias,
Interesting.
saying celebrities are pressured to support Democratic candidates, and anyone who expresses conservative views gets blacklisted.
Yeah. The influence of Hollywood on politics is definitely complex. Musk's perspective highlights how much power and groupthink can be concentrated in the entertainment industry.
Yeah,
Sure.
for sure. He even claims that Hollywood execs use like a system of rewards and punishments to keep celebrities in line politically.
Wow. Really? That's a serious allegation. Like, if that's true, it raises concerns about freedom of expression and the possibility of coercion within the industry.
Right.
It'd be interesting to see if any hard evidence comes out to support that.
Absolutely. Okay, so remember how he mentioned a Tesla phone earlier?
Oh, yeah, the free speech phone.
Yeah, he circles back to that, saying it would be all about promoting free speech and open access to information.
Right. That'd be a huge statement. A Tesla phone focused on free speech could disrupt the entire mobile phone market,
Right.
which is basically controlled by Apple and Google right now.
No doubt. He imagines a phone that would resist censorship and prioritize user privacy and data security.
Yeah, those are hot topics these days.
Yeah, with all the concerns about data collection and surveillance.
For sure.
Definitely. Okay, time for a little change of pace. Musk gets into his vision for a more sustainable future,
Makes sense.
arguing that switching to renewable energy is crucial for saving the planet.
Yeah, his commitment to sustainability is no secret. It reflects this growing awareness of the environmental challenges we're facing.
Exactly. He talks about the progress Tesla has made in developing electric vehicles and the importance of investing in clean energy technologies.
Right. His efforts to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles and renewable energy have had a huge impact.
He also brings up his work with SpaceX, highlighting their goal of making humanity a multiplanetary species.
Oh, right. Colonizing Mars.
Yeah,
That's a pretty big goal.
I know, right?
It's this long-term vision for humanity's future beyond Earth. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Mind-blowing is right. He even mentions the possibility of creating artificial gravity on spacecraft, which would allow for like long-duration space travel without the negative health effects of zero gravity.
Whoa, artificial gravity. That's incredible. It could totally revolutionize space travel, allowing humans to go further into the cosmos than we ever thought possible.
Yeah, right.
Imagine the scientific discoveries waiting to be made.
Okay, now get ready to get philosophical.
Okay.
Musk goes deep, talking about the meaning of life and how important it is to follow your passions.
It's fascinating to hear him talk about this stuff. It shows a side of him we don't always see, you know?
Yeah.
Like a thoughtful, philosophical side.
He encourages listeners to find something they're truly passionate about and go after it no matter what obstacles they face.
It's a good message. In a world that often feels so chaotic and uncertain, it's good to be reminded to find meaning in what we do.
Absolutely. And get this, he even talks about the possibility of uploading human consciousness into computers.
Whoa, hold on. Uploading consciousness.
Essentially achieving digital immortality.
Okay, now that is next level stuff. The idea of uploading consciousness raises so many questions.
Right.
Like huge ethical and philosophical questions about what it means to be human, the nature of identity.
No doubt. He admits there are potential risks with this kind of technology.
Yeah.
But he's also optimistic about the benefits. Like maybe it could allow us to break free from the limitations of our physical bodies and reach a whole new level of existence.
It's pretty mind-boggling to think about.
Right.
But it is a powerful reminder that the future holds possibilities we can barely imagine.
Right. And to wrap things up, he leaves listeners with a call to action.
Oh, what that?
Urging them to get involved in politics and fight for the future they want to see.
He sees complacency as dangerous.
That's right.
He thinks we need to challenge the status quo and actually fight for what we believe in.
Exactly. It's a powerful message, you know?
It is.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the world.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in, right? We've covered everything from killer squirrels to digital immortality. What are your thoughts on all of this? What stood out to you?
What strikes me is that contrast, between his anxieties about the future of democracy and freedom,
Right.
and his unwavering faith in human potential and innovation. It's this really interesting tension that runs through all of his ideas.
It definitely keeps you thinking.
It really does. And you know what? We've only scratched the surface of this interview.
I know, right? There's so much more.
We haven't even touched on his thoughts on climate change, population control, or the role of government.
Oh, yeah. Get ready, because things are about to get even more interesting. We'll be back with part 2 of our deep dive into the mind of Elon Musk, where we'll tackle those topics and more.
See you soon.
Okay, so we just spent the last half hour talking about everything from free speech to killer squirrels to the possibility of a Tesla phone. But we're just getting started.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, this was a 3-hour interview. Buckle up. There's a lot more to unpack.
Definitely. In this part, we're diving into some of his more controversial viewpoints, like his perspective on climate change.
Right, because he's obviously a huge advocate for renewable energy, right? I mean, Tesla is basically leading the charge on that.
Exactly. He's invested a ton in developing those technologies, but he also pushes back against what he sees as the alarmist predictions about climate change. He doesn't think things are as simple as they're often made out to be.
Okay, so he's not buying the whole, we're all going to die in 10 years thing.
No, not really. He actually argues that human innovation can be the solution to climate change, not the problem.
So what does he propose?
Well, he's really big on nuclear energy.
Hmm.
He sees it as a safe and efficient way to generate clean energy, even though it does freak a lot of people out.
Right.
Yeah.
That's definitely going against the grain, but it seems like Musk is never afraid to challenge conventional wisdom, especially when it comes to finding solutions to big problems. So what else does he have to say about climate change?
Well, he also calls out what he sees as hypocrisy among some climate activists,
Yeah.
they'll fly around in their private jets and tell everyone else to cut back on their carbon footprint.
Yeah, that always kind of rubs me the wrong way, too.
Yeah, it's hard to take somebody seriously when they don't practice what they preach.
Exactly.
And Musk also takes issue with some of the current climate policies. He argues that they're actually counterproductive. He thinks they often just burden people with extra costs without really addressing the core issues.
Yeah, like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone, right?
Exactly. It might look like you're doing something, but it's not actually solving the problem.
Right. And speaking of controversial topics, Musk also wades into the whole debate on population control, and he's expressing some concern about declining birth rates in developed countries.
Oh, really? I thought overpopulation was supposed to be the big worry these days.
Right. That's the usual narrative, but Musk actually suggests that underpopulation could be a bigger problem in the long run.
Yeah.
He worries about, what happens to economic growth and social stability if we don't have enough young people to support an aging population.
Yeah, I guess if everyone is old, who's going to do all the work?
Right. So what's the solution?
He's advocating for policies that actually encourage families to have more kids. He believes that a healthy, growing population is essential for a thriving society.
Okay, so he's tackling climate change, population control, Anything else we should brace ourselves for?
Oh, definitely.
Hmm.
He goes on to discuss the role of government in society. And let me tell you, he does not hold back. As a self-described libertarian, he believes in very limited government intervention and maximum individual freedom.
Well, that's not really a surprise considering what we've heard so far.
Right, exactly. He sees government bureaucracy as, like, inefficient and wasteful.
Uh-huh.
And he really thinks the private sector is much better at coming up with new ideas and solving problems. He argues that individuals should be able to make their own choices without the government getting in the way.
So less red tape, more individual responsibility. That seems to be his motto.
Exactly. He's also really skeptical of government programs, He says they often create unintended consequences and actually lead to more dependency.
So he's not a fan of big government, but what does he think the government should be doing?
He believes that the government's primary responsibility should be to just create an environment where businesses can thrive
Okay.
and people can succeed on their own. He sees entrepreneurship and innovation as the keys to progress and prosperity for everyone.
So basically just get out of the way and let people do their thing.
Pretty much. He really believes that a strong economy driven by a thriving private sector is the best way to create opportunities and improve living standards for everybody.
It's definitely a different way of looking at things.
It is.
But with Musk, we've kind of come to expect that. Right?
Oh, absolutely. He's not afraid to go against the grain and make people think, even on the toughest topics.
So after hearing all of this, what's your take on Musk's views?
Well, I think it's really important to remember that we're just getting a few glimpses of a much larger conversation.
Right.
But one thing that really stands out to me is, like, how consistent his core beliefs are.
What do you mean?
Well, whether he's talking about climate change, population control, or the role of government, you always hear this underlying message. He believes in people's potential, in individual liberty, and in the power of human ingenuity to solve problems.
Okay, so he's not just throwing out random controversial opinions. There's, like, an actual philosophy behind it all.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes him so compelling. He's not afraid to think big, challenge the status quo and get us to consider new perspectives, even if they make it a little uncomfortable.
He definitely gets people talking, that's for sure. So after that whirlwind tour of Musk's more controversial side, what's up next?
Well, in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to be exploring his thoughts on education, healthcare, and the future of work.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. He's got some pretty radical ideas about how we need to prepare for a world that's changing so quickly thanks to technology.
Sounds like we're in for another wild ride. Okay, so we've explored Musk's views on everything from free speech and climate change to the possibility of a Tesla phone. Now what?
Well, in this last part, we're going to be looking into his ideas about education,
Okay.
healthcare, and the future of work.
I'm guessing he's got some pretty unconventional ideas about these too.
You could say that. He doesn't shy away from shaking things up.
So let's start with education. What's his take on the way things are now?
He's been pretty critical, saying it's outdated and doesn't prepare students for the real world,
Yeah.
especially with AI and automation changing the game so rapidly.
So what exactly is wrong with how we're teaching kids today?
He thinks there's way too much emphasis on memorization and tests. He argues that doesn't really measure the skills that are going to matter in a future where AI is calling the shots.
So what should we be teaching kids?
He emphasizes things like critical thinking,
Okay.
problem solving, creativity,
Right.
and adaptability.
Okay.
Skills machines can't easily replicate.
Makes sense. We need to give kids the tools to succeed in a world that's constantly changing.
Exactly. And he also thinks we should be teaching them about AI and coding from a young age, not just as like technical skills,
Yeah.
but as a way to understand how the world really works.
So basically, AI literacy should be just as important as being able to read and write.
He seems to think so, yeah. He sees AI as such a game changer that we need to equip future generations to use it and understand what it means and have a hand in how it develops.
So it's like if you don't understand the tools shaping the world, you're going to be left behind.
Right. And Musk isn't just talking about this. He's putting his money where his mouth is. He founded his own experimental school
Really?
called Ad Astra.
What's so different about it?
Well, it's all about project-based learning and like exploring different disciplines together.
Okay.
So instead of just sitting in a classroom and memorizing facts, kids at Ad Astra are encouraged to tackle real-world projects that combine different subjects.
So it's more about like actually using knowledge and building those critical thinking skills rather than just absorbing information passively.
Exactly. It's a pretty fascinating experiment in like rethinking education,
Mm-hmm.
and it shows how willing Musk is to try new things and push the boundaries.
It sounds like he's trying to build a school for the future.
I think that's exactly what he's doing. So let's move on to healthcare.
Okay.
What are Musk's thoughts on that front?
I'm gonna guess he's not a fan of the way things are.
You'd be right. He's been very critical about how healthcare works. He calls it bureaucratic and expensive,
Yeah.
and says it focuses on treating symptoms instead of getting at the root causes of diseases.
So what's the solution? More technology, I'm guessing?
He definitely thinks technology has a huge role to play in transforming healthcare. He talks about inventing new diagnostic tools,
Okay.
personalized treatments,
Uh-huh.
and even extending human lifespans.
That's getting into some seriously futuristic stuff.
Hmm.
Anything specific he's excited about?
He's especially interested in brain-computer interfaces, like what Neuralink is working on.
Those are those implantable brain chips, right?
Yep, that's the one.
Wow.
He believes those could revolutionize how we use computers and maybe even let us merge with AI.
Okay, that's some mind-blowing stuff, but also kind of scary now.
It is.
I mean, what happens when technology gets that intertwined with our brains?
It definitely brings up some big ethical questions like where do we draw the line between humans and machines?
Right.
And what if those technologies are used for the wrong reasons? But Musk is saying we need to be proactive, establish some ethical rules
Mm-hmm.
and safeguards to make sure these powerful tools are used responsibly.
It's like we need to be thinking about the implications right now before things advance so far that we can't control them anymore.
Absolutely. It's a conversation society really needs to be having.
Oh,
Okay, let's shift gears one last time and talk about the future of work.
I have a feeling this is where things get a bit unsettling.
Well, Musk's been very clear that automation is going to make a lot of jobs disappear.
Yeah, robots taking our jobs. That's classic sci-fi stuff, but it's starting to feel more and more real every day.
It is. Musk thinks a lot of jobs that humans do right now will eventually be done by machines.
So what happens to all those people who are out of work then?
It's a big question. No easy answers. But Musk thinks we can adapt to this new reality by focusing on developing skills that are uniquely human,
Yeah.
things machines can't easily copy.
Like what specifically?
He emphasizes things like creativity,
Okay.
critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and people skills. Things that are important for dealing with complex situations and building relationships.
So the jobs that rely on human connection and creativity will be the ones that stick around.
That's one way to think about it, yeah. He also suggests we may need to completely rethink our idea of work. He's even brought up the idea of a universal basic income to make sure everyone's got a safety net in a world with fewer jobs.
That's a pretty radical idea. But I guess when we're facing so much potential change, we need to start thinking outside the box.
Totally. And that's exactly what Musk wants us to do.
So after hearing all this, what's the main message? What's Musk telling us about the future?
I think the big theme here is being prepared and adapting. He sees the future as this time of huge opportunity, but also big disruption. And he's saying we need to be ready for it.
So embrace innovation, build new skills, and be ready to adapt.
Exactly. He's challenging us to be bold, to be curious, to be able to adjust and face the unknown head-on with optimism and a desire to shape our own destiny.
He's definitely not your typical tech CEO.
Not at all. Whether you agree with everything he says or not, you have to admit he makes you think.
And that's what this whole deep dive is about, right? Getting people to think about the big issues facing us and challenge those old ways of thinking.
Absolutely. We might not have all the answers yet,
Right.
but by exploring different perspectives and having open conversations, we can start to picture a future that's both exciting and sustainable for everyone.
Well, I gotta say, this deep dive into the mind of Elon Musk has been quite a ride. From free speech and climate change to the potential of brain-computer interfaces, we've covered a ton of ground.
We have. He's a complicated and fascinating person who definitely gets people talking.
He reminds us that the future isn't just something that happens to us. We build it.
That's a good point. And by embracing innovation and challenging assumptions and engaging in meaningful dialogue, we can create a future that works for all of humanity.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Elon Musk. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep imagining those possibilities.